This is its financial history too, where money's past reveals tomorrow's truth. For most people, Sun Tzu exists as a symbol more than a thinker. His name floats around boardrooms, startup culture, and motivational posts, quoted by people who admire the idea of strategy without ever reading the source. He's presented as a prophet of domination, a philosopher of winning at all costs. But that version of Sun Tzu is wrong. Completely wrong. Because when you strip away the slogans and mythology, something surprising emerges. Sun Tzu was not obsessed with winning battles. He was obsessed with avoiding them. Not because he feared conflict, but because he understood its price. Sun Tzu wasn't writing a handbook for warriors chasing glory. He was writing a warning for states on the edge of financial collapse. And in doing so, he became one of the first thinkers in history to recognize a dangerous truth. The greatest threat to a nation is often not the enemy across the border, but the cost of fighting them. Welcome to its financial history too, where money, power, and history collide, and nothing is ever as simple as it looks. To understand Sun Tzu's real genius, you have to understand the world that shaped him. His ideas didn't appear in isolation. They were forged inside a system slowly destroying itself. China during the late spring and autumn period and the early warring states era was fractured, unstable, and perpetually at war. Kingdoms rose and fell in rapid succession, each convinced it could unify the land, each bleeding its treasury dry in the attempt. Warfare was no longer occasional, it was constant. And it was getting more expensive every year. Armies were growing larger. Warfare shifted from elite chariot skirmishes to massive infantry mobilizations that required food, weapons, armor, roads, horses, and supply chains stretching for miles. War stopped being a matter of courage and became a matter of logistics. The moment an army marched, the clock started ticking. Grain had to be transported. Workers were pulled from farms. Taxes were raised. Every campaign was effectively a loan taken against the future, and many states defaulted. Western audiences often imagine ancient war as heroic and tactical. But in Sun Tzu's world, war was economic before it was anything else. A campaign lasting months could cripple a small state. A campaign lasting years could destroy a large one. And yet, rulers kept fighting. This was the crisis Sun Tzu faced, not a lack of bravery, not weak soldiers, but a system addicted to war without understanding its cost. Sun Tzu wasn't a mystic. He was a risk analyst. He looked at manpower, supply lines, timelines, and resource depletion and reached a conclusion no one wanted to hear. Victory is meaningless if it bankrupts the state. That's why the most important line in the art of war comes before tactics, deception, or terrain. War is of vital importance to the state, not honorable, not glorious. Vital meaning dangerous, destabilizing, and potentially fatal. Everything that follows is about control. Containing war, compressing it, making it faster, cheaper, and less destructive. Sun Tzu's obsession wasn't conquest, it was minimizing exposure. Even his most famous ideas reveal this hidden logic. The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. That's not poetry. That's cost avoidance. Achieving objectives without burning resources. No nation has ever benefited from prolonged warfare. That's not philosophy, that's accounting. The longer war lasts, the more it corrodes the foundations of the state. Speed, intelligence, deception, psychological pressure, these aren't abstract virtues. They are cheaper than armies. Before Sun Tzu, war had been ritualized. Aristocrats fought for honor, not efficiency. Cost was rarely discussed. But by his time, war had scaled into a national enterprise. States standardized taxes, built bureaucracies, and reformed economies just to sustain their armies. Sun Tzu understood something radical. War had become financially suicidal. While other thinkers glorified heroism, Sun Tzu treated war like a balance sheet. He calculated supply chains, labor loss, transport inefficiencies, and opportunity cost centuries before those words existed. That's why the art of war feels strangely uninterested in battle itself. Entire sections focus on feeding armies, transporting supplies, and avoiding waste. When an army is raised and maintained, he warns, the resources of the state will be exhausted. Distance increases cost. Time multiplies it. Transport drains the treasury faster than wages. And commanders who chase symbolic victories bankrupt their nations while winning nothing that matters. Sun Tzu insists on using the enemy's resources whenever possible, not as a clever trick, but as financial necessity. He condemns prolonged campaigns not as cowardice, but as fiscal irresponsibility. His view is blunt: logistics don't support strategy. Logistics are strategy. The same logic governs his obsession with intelligence. A single spy, he explains, can prevent an entire army from marching in the wrong direction. Information saves money. Foreknowledge, what we now call data, is the cheapest weapon a state can deploy. Misallocated intelligence is misallocated capital. Even his fixation on speed is economic at its core. Speed doesn't just win battles, it limits cost. Every extra day an army waits consumes resources. Victory delayed is money burned. Victory achieved through maneuver preserves capital. Sun Tzu doesn't oppose war. He opposes waste. And the greatest waste, in his view, is fighting battles that didn't need to be fought at all. That's why he prioritizes diplomacy, intimidation, alliances, and psychological collapse over physical destruction. To him, these are not secondary options. They are the main strategy because they protect the treasury. History proved him right. States that ignored cost collapsed under prolonged warfare. States that applied Sun Tzu's logic survived longer by avoiding economic exhaustion. And this is where ancient history becomes modern reality. From Vietnam to Afghanistan, from World War I to modern proxy conflicts, wars are rarely lost on the battlefield alone. They are lost when the economic model behind them fails. Sun Tzu would recognize the pattern instantly. That's why modern power looks so much like his teachings. Intelligence operations, cyber warfare, sanctions, deterrence, proxy wars, all aim to achieve influence while minimizing financial exposure. Sun Tzu might not recognize the technology, but he would recognize the math. His deepest lesson is simple and unsettling. States do not collapse because they lose battles. They collapse because they drain the capital that holds them together. Victory means nothing if the economy fails afterward. The best war is the one that doesn't require rebuilding your nation when it ends. The art of war isn't a manual of aggression. It's a manual of restraint. Not about overpowering rivals, but outlasting them. Sun Tzu doesn't glorify conquest. He glorifies stability. He praises rulers who preserve resources over those who seize cities. Generals who win without fighting over those who destroy armies. States that know when not to act over those driven by pride. Sun Tzu was not a warrior philosopher. He was a steward of national solvency. And his message still stands. War is the most expensive policy decision a state can make, and miscalculating its cost is fatal. Strength is not measured by how hard you strike, but by how long you can afford to strike. History doesn't repeat, but if you ignore its math, it will still send the bill. If this changed how you see history, subscribe. Because history always has answers, and I'll show you where to find them.